So for some reason, this motor's got a blockout plate over where the generator would go. So we're gonna take a look at that. So going over the motor, we looked at that blockout plate. You can see the it's hard to see it, but the gear inside, everything's turning. So that's good. So that means it should have a full cam chest. All the head bolts are intact. A couple fins are broken off here. I saw a bent one somewhere else here. So we'll address that. That one's bent, we'll address that. Points are all there. All the bolts are all there. So this probably was a running bike at one point. There was, hasn't been taken apart and then put back together. It's got a, I'm not sure how many teeth that is, we'll have to count it. But everything else looks pretty good. It's got the intake on it. There's something going on here a little bit, and you can see they had put, I don't know if they tried welding something on it, but all the fins on the barrels look good. So overall, it looks like a pretty good motor. So looking over the frame, you got your dash bolts here. The crash bar bolts are still on. We still got the kickstand mount on. We'll have to see if this rod here that goes here is bent, because it doesn't want to come off easily. It should slip off pretty okay. Don't see any major issues with the frame. This tab's nice to have. A lot of times these are cut off. That's your front pivot point for your seat. Yeah, we'll have to get this out. It's not rebounding. This is a front battery box mount. This mount here is where your inner primary, outer primary bolts do. This is actually the mount that goes on the outer primary. We'll find some actual adjusters. That is a Canadian military sand pad rear stand. I believe that's only Canadian. So that's nice. The frame looks really good, except for this right here. So this is it's been drilled out. It should be like that. So we'll have to take that other frame and weld it in the hole and then re-drill it for that. Other than that, the frame looks good. What we'll do is we'll try and decipher some of the stampings and see if we can get a year on it and go from there. One other little thing I noticed right here. Something's been gone on here, like there's some welding and stuff. So that probably have to just, once I clean it off, I'll take a look and see what it is. And for sure, weld in this little divot here. One of the things that you'll notice on these frames is usually right around this point on the back, there's and here, there's usually a little divot, a little dent. And that's from your, yeah, it's right around here usually. There's a mount, like a small half rear crash bar. It mounts here, loops here, so that when the air cleaner is in position, if the bike fell over, it didn't crush the air cleaner, it just went onto the crash bar. So that's usually when you feel it. This one's actually really good. Just a little spot underneath here. Other than that, it looks really good. So one of the first things I like to do when I'm doing a project like this is just inspect the bearings, the hubs on any wheel that comes in. Because if the hub isn't any good, well then you got to start over. And these hubs, if you don't know about them, these are star hubs. And what's unique about them compared to like newer Harleys or newer motorcycles in general is that the hub is the outer race. So if it's not hasn't been taken care of in the last 80 years, the pitting could be so bad that the hub itself is junk, and I have several of them that I can show you that are just, I would never run them. They'd be good for just a static display, or I don't even know. They're junk. So we're going to go through this and I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to pull the axle out first. So this is the axle nut. This is the nut that goes on the opposite side of the axle plate on the frame. This is your outer braking plate. You can see it's missing the arm. So I got another arm somewhere. I'll find that. There's a speedo drive that goes in here, and it's missing the grease nipple. Other than that, it looks in decent shape. So we got some brake pads in it. They don't look too bad. Actually look really good. Look fairly new too. Because you can only, like, they're not seating all the way around yet. They haven't touched everything. Here's the brake drum. This drive here, that's your speedo drive. The drum shouldn't have come off that easy. There should be 5 lug bolts. Similar to this. So those would go through and tighten up into these holes. So we'll need those. It should come out. Sprocket doesn't look horrible, but we'll probably replace it anyway. You can see it's missing one of the rivets, and the rivets look a little funky, a little different than I'm used to. So pull the axle out, and I'll have to fix this axle. Just if you look at it this way, that should continue this way. So this has been bent up, so we'll bring it down later. So now we'll get into the wheel. And one of the things I wanted to show you about the wheel is I think this is a 42 wheel. There's minute differences. I have to do my research again, but the bead lockers, I believe on 1942 are round. On 43 rims, they're flat on two sides and rounded on the end, so it's kind of squared. So I think this is a 42 18-inch rim. So I'll have to do some, I'll have to figure it out again. One of the other things I wanted to show you was this piece right here. You see this little step here? Someone made that. So that's going to come off. That's going to get replaced. So we'll start up tearing this all apart. So we'll start off by taking the 5 bolts off on the opposite side of the brake drum. Again, first thing I noticed, there's no lock washers on these. There should be a lock washer underneath these to stop them from coming out. And there's a reason they're called star hubs, is because this cover is 5 points like a star. So this one has a lock washer. So there's a bunch of pieces here together. So there's a whole process on doing these wheels. I'll probably show you how I do them in the future, but you got your spacer, another spacer, and this. There's actually 2 covers here. There we go. All right, so here's your inner cover, here's your outer cover. Right here is a cork gasket, so it goes right in there. So what I always do is I put everything in the way it came out, so that you know which side is what. There's going to be 2 different sets of rollers in here, and they're probably going to be 2 different sizes, because that's just how it usually works. So we'll spin this around now. There's a C-clip on this side, or snap ring, sorry, snap ring. There we go. There's your snap ring. Then you got a dust seal. Now you got to watch, because as you pull it out, the other side starts falling out. That's your bearing, inner bearing race. So we'll call it bearing, inner bearing race. So here's cylinder roller. Spin it back around again. We'll pull the cage out. You can see the cage. There's a spacer. So we'll put that all on the same side. So there's a cage that holds all these, but it only holds it in from one side. Spin it around again. Another snap ring. And then there's a spacer right here. Can't tell anything because it's so greasy. And it's not fresh grease. You can tell it's older grease. Okay. So here's the brake side bearing assembly, and here's the opposite side. You can see the difference. One's larger than the other. And that's it for the internal components. So what we'll do now is clean all this up, take a look at the bearing races. The brake side is always better than the opposite side, because one of the worst things about one of the worst things that people do nowadays is when they wash their bikes, they tend to take a pressure washer and just blast around where your grease is, which is never good. So as you're blasting it in there, to get that, to get all the grease off and around your axles and stuff, what you're doing is you're pouring water into your bottom, into your wheels, and you're going to cause failure, because as you're pushing the grease out, you're pushing water in. What does water do? It ruins bearings. So that's one of the problems nowadays is with people is they're so finicky on their bikes being so perfectly clean that wherever there's a little bit of grease, they tend to hammer on it, and you're just driving water in. So don't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean all this up, and then I'll show you how it all goes together and what to look for, and hopefully we got a good wheel here.